Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Finding Financial Fitness Show. I'm your host, Nino Gonzalez, joined by my co-host, Chen, and a special guest today, Brett Burky of Paperstac. Paperstac. Brett, welcome to the show.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, good. Well, thank you so much for being on. I'm really excited to dive in on Paperstac. Again, as I've always caveat with the show, we like to bring people on that we've personally talked to and also worked with. I myself have a few notes, and we'll get into what notes are with Paperstac. Love the platform, love the convenience, and Brett's been so open and willing to just share his knowledge. He is one of the founders of Paperstac. So let's dive right in. Brett, tell us a little bit about your background. Like what were you doing and how did you end up founding a company called Paperstac?
So I didn't know anything about notes prior to running into my business partner Rick. I went to college with Rick. Before I was doing this, I had another company. It was a startup, my background was in internet marketing. Prior to that, it was in music. I was a professional musician for years. Worked for Disney, did a cruise ship, play guitar, sing. But that lifestyle gets old. You're out late every night, and you're working while everyone else is partying, and you're sleeping during the day, and your life's back. So I was like, this isn't a long term thing for me. So I got into internet marketing, and then with that, I started other companies, different softwares, different startups, and then I was after some of those businesses were done. I was just like consulting. I kind of hated it because I would work myself out of a job, do a good job. Hey, you got us to the top of Google, and now we don't need you. So kind of like one of those things. And I ran into Rick at a grocery store. I was literally on the wrong side of not wrong side of time. We live on one side, and I came over here for my daughter's dance studio, and I literally had her froggy backpack on with a little frog on the back. Uh, some guy walks behind me and goes, "Nice backpack." And they're like, I was like, "Who the heck is that?" And then I turn around, I was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing over here?" And he's like, "What are you doing over here?" I was like, "I live here." And I was like, "I come over here for my daughter's dance studio." So he's like, "Oh," he's like, "You're in tech, right?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Come by and see what we're doing. See if you know just check it out." And so I went and saw what they were doing, Rick and TJ, and it was called they kind of were trying to explain notes, and they were explaining there's a big influx of these things that came after the 2008 downturn, and at that time, the banks weren't releasing all the notes, and then Obama basically said, "Look, I'm not going to be the president that forecloses on the nation. You need to liquidate these notes, get it out of here." And so that was the ruling that kind of came in, and all of a sudden they just hit the market. But there was no, it was very wild, wild west. It's kind of how even the paper stack was spawned. It was kind of spawned from that idea of Rick and TJ doing a trade, wiring $200,000 to somebody, expecting to get the collateral back. Guy went on a vacation for 2 weeks. And he thought they got robbed. He eventually came back, and it was all their friends and family money, so they're freaking out. It's like they're falling in love, $100,000, stuff like that. So they're like, "This is a great product. This is a terrible experience. You can make great money, but this needs some guardrails." And so that's when I came in. They were trying to get something off the ground called Investment Note Exchange, which I hated the name because it was so long, and it's investment note ends with an E and an exchange. I was like, "You guys, this is 26 characters, and you guys didn't put the two," but they're not marketing that. They're fine. So and so I kind of did my research on it, and then I showed up the next day at the office, and I sat there with them for a while until Rick was like, "What do you want? What are you here for? We can't pay you." And I was just like, "I don't care." I was like, "I want in." I was like, "I want in. I'll go through this with you, and we'll make this happen." And I was like, "Where's your repository?" They're like, "What's a repository?" I was like, "Well, where's the code? Who has the code?" He's like, "I don't know. I mean, I guess the team we hired." I was like, "Geez, okay, you guys really do not know what you're doing." I was like, "You're spending so much money, and then you don't know what you're doing at all." And so I was like, so I started talking to the team. And what we got back eventually was just, and then so that's when I was like, "Dude, I'm a tech guy in the sense that I can do like front end websites and stuff like that, but not the whole back end developing database, all that stuff like that." We needed like a ninja. And then so it kind of happened that it was funny because we went to like try to interview people, and then we need a developer, we need someone else that can actually be on the team that is also going to be an owner. And he showed me a website, and I was like, shit. He's like, yeah, I got a buddy, that my wife, I kind of know him. And he's like, he's a developer, I think. I was like, well, let me see what he did. And so he showed me what he did, and I was like, what year was this that he built this for you? And he's like, told me. I was like, this guy's cutting edge, whoever this guy is. And so then I convinced him, and we rebranded the company to be Paperstac. And that was it.
Wow. So what are
Yeah.
you mentioned notes, and we'll get into what Paperstack is, but before we do that, can you explain what notes are specifically?
Sure. So notes are kind of like the IOU. So you have the mortgage of basically when you're getting a house, you're basically the mortgage are like the terms, like it's kind of what are you going to agree on, who's the borrower, who's the lender, all those fun things. There's all like the outlines, but the IOU is the note. That's what the transfers, the transfers everything. So that's the thing. That's the thing that holds the. I mean, they both hold value, but the notes, where it's at. So I mean, that is how you collect money as a bank. There's the things that get traded. I mean, mortgages get transferred, notes get transferred via an allonge, but you need both those. And yeah, it's just basically they're IOUs. So you own that. Someone pays you till they pay it off, and then you give them the deed.
Okay, so let's go through an example. So if somebody has a $500,000 mortgage, how could they create a note out of that could then potentially be on Paperstack?
Well, first they have to own whatever this house is outright. So they if they had a
Correct.
mortgage and they were paying somebody else, but if let's just say that I or I own a house and pay would like to have a mortgage, and we would set that up. That would be seller finance, seller carryback, whatever you want to call it. And then we would come with terms. We set it up. You put a down payment. We set it up as a mortgage. We get a trust. We get it written by an underwriter, an RMLO, and then at that point, after she signs and I have a report with the county, I'm the rightful owner of that note until pays everything off. And so
I
that's how
think,
that works. And
yeah,
so
I think the most of the people don't even know that private individuals can create notes
mhm.
because we're so used to
Yeah.
going to the bank
Yeah.
for this type of
Mhm.
things. So this is really just at a you and me level. You have a piece of property that I want. You own it 100% free and clear, and you can sell it
Mhm.
to me, and we can cut out the Wells Fargo's and the Bank of America's. We don't need a bank in between acting, like basically you're passing the money. I'm passing the money to them and then pass it to you, right? So we could just cut them out
That's
and
correct.
go direct.
Yeah. So that and it happens all the time too, and people don't really realize it. When you go to a bank, let's just say you went down to FBC or whatever you went to get your mortgage established. Usually, what that happens is you'll get a letter like 3 months after that says, "Hey, your mortgage is sold, and now you pay us." And it's like PennyMac or Aquin or some company that bought it. And so that's the first trade. And so usually, what happens on the back end, people don't know, but their mortgages are selling a lot. As long as the servicing doesn't change, you have no idea. You get something
Mhm.
called a TILA letter, but there's no action to be taken. So a lot of times people just look at it and go, "Do I have to do something?" No, they just tossed it. But so yeah, I mean, in the back end, that's how it's those notes trade as long as like let's just say that Aquin or PennyMac or the servicer, the investor A might own it, and he sells it to investor B, and investor B sells it to investor C, and then all they're doing is changing the wiring instructions in the background. Those things trade, and those
Interesting.
things get packaged up to pools. So it does happen at the bank level. Usually, they don't. A lot of banks and money lenders are usually in the origination process. They want to turn over their capital and get their capital back because they're not so much into buy and hold, for 30 years. That's not their model. Their model is, get all the fees up front,
Yeah.
put all these fees on origination, collect a couple payments to show good faith, and then sell that off. Because then they want to take that capital and do it again
Yep.
and just keep doing that. And then the people who buy like large portfolios of notes are ironically life insurance companies. So IBC people, infinite banking, they have a God, what are they called? Oh my goodness, I forget the name. But there's a person inside a life insurance company that's what their job is. They're the ones who find the big things because all they're trying to do is make a eight prep, and then if they can make more than that, then that's great. And they'll usually pay at par because they're not trying to make this super discount. They're going for the long term. They're looking for stable assets they can hold for 30 years. Because then they pass that off the return to their users and everyone.
Yep. So well said. Yeah, that's interesting how that could be connected. And obviously we're a huge fan of IBC on this show. So going back to the notes, and obviously, I think the term seller finance is commonly thrown out there, but when I first heard about it, I think when people are exposed to it, they more think about it of like, oh, I'm going to do business and I don't know if this person's a shady character. So that's, I think, where Paperstac comes in. So what does Paperstac do in the operation of the transaction of the notes?
So think of Paperstac as a kind of like a marketplace. We can be like almost like a Zillow tied to a title company, but for notes. That's really what it is. And you're on there, you're setting up your saved searches. You're looking for something in certain areas based off certain criteria. You're trying to hit certain numbers. You're trying to hit whatever yield you're trying to get. And then once you come to terms with a seller, you go through the closing on our site. And so that you would just go through the transaction. We would facilitate the closing, making sure for a safe and secure transaction where everything's done. You put in all your data, who's taking title, how are you taking it, what's your entity name, all things like that. And based off the data that's provided, based off sale price, cutoff date, which cutoff date means when the payment's going to transfer from me to you, and then your entity will generate all the documents. Now all the documents are automatically generated, and you just have to sign. Just click and sign, and then there's a built-in escrow. So as a buyer, it's a good feature because your funds sit safely until an auditor actually looks at the paperwork that they use for origination and say, yeah, this is what they said it is. And if it's not, then you and as a buyer are within your right to say, look, you said this was all originals, they're all copies, I'm out. So then you can just get your money sent back. That's it. But
so
that doesn't happen quite often. Go ahead.
So you guys almost provide a sort of like a turnkey solution, right, for note sellers and note buyers, because otherwise, without you guys in the picture, you have to source these notes, right? You have to find them. If I was an investor, I'll have to find them, which is very difficult. You have to send out like 1 million flyers to get one response, right? One real deal.
Yeah.
And then the other thing would be the due diligence, like you were saying, right? You guys provide all that on the back end. So that's kind of the benefits of using you guys as a platform to do these transactions.
Yeah, just a lot easier. I mean, because it's one of those things where a lot of sellers, if they're big players, they don't want to teach newbies. They're like, look, do you know how to close or not? I've heard that, and the beauty wasn't, we didn't think of it at the time, but we basically have bridged the gap because the big guys come and they're able to, like, man, I'm getting 85 cents on the dollar, or 90 cents on the dollar for my note. And because normally they would sell it to the next person in line, which we call it the waterfall. That's what it's called. But that next person in line might be buying it at 60 and they're dealing with the 85 cents because they'll deal with the retail market. But these bigger funds are now going over them, going right to our site to where they listen, they're getting the 85.90. And the reason why is because we made it so easy. And the buyers are like, man, I'm able to get something at 85 cents on the dollar because they're maybe used to maybe even buying it higher. But we've had it in the past where I've been at a conference where they didn't know that they were both there, but one of the sellers, which was one of the hedge funds, and then one of the buyers were both there. And I had a conversation with both of them. The buyer was like, when I saw who I was in this conversation with, which hedge fund, I got kind of scared, but I realized all I had to do was just follow your to-do list and I could do it. And he's like, I closed my first deal with a large hedge fund on your platform. And then one of the guys from that hedge fund was like, man, I sold a deal for 90 cents on the dollar. We never sold it that high. I'm like, that guys are right over there that you sold it to. But I was like, I don't know if I should tell him. It's like, I shouldn't. That's not privy knowledge. Hey, this is the guy you bought. I don't.
Sure.
Like that.
That's the whole purpose, to keep it private with Paperstac. And
right.
I will say, just from personal experience, I do want to mention this, that I remember when I first heard about Paperstac, I didn't know much about notes, and I went on the Paperstac website, and it almost looked too easy. I was expecting something to be like super challenging and have to negotiate and do all these things, but literally you go on and it's a marketplace. You see these addresses, you see these homes, or you see these lots, and you go through, the asking price is all there. You can inquire, you can message them, you have access to the due diligence packet that's already there. And then, like you mentioned, if you're not sure, you can message the seller, or you can go through, and if the docs don't match up in escrow, you have a third party company there. I mean, I couldn't think of any other. I'd heard people talking about notes in the past, but I never seen it in this regard, where it's like the best platform to connect people. And then also with that, because at first I wanted to learn about it, I had done the Paperstac Academy, which I do. Could you share a little bit about what that academy is for people?
Yeah, the Paperstac Academy was kind of a, I don't know how that came about. I think it was more along the lines, we had the studio, and so we had podcasts, and but I like, I'm also like my background also too was as a professor. So a lot of people don't know that, but I still actually teach like SEO and paid search at Full Sail University. So, but they it's all online, and it's a great gig, So they just, but they like the fact that I'm like out there doing it. Like, they really enjoy the fact that, like, I can come back and tell, basically tell students, hey, this is what I'm doing, and this is actually what I'm doing, like, right this second, on Paperstac, and they can see, hey, this guy's actually doing the marketing. I mean, so that's really cool. Actually, the best compliment I ever got was, man, this guy's like the Indiana Jones of internet marketing. I was like, dude, that was the best compliment I've ever heard in my life. It's like the Indiana Jones of internet marketing. Cool. But all that to say, there's called the pedagogy, which is the style of teaching and understanding how to teach. And I was like, I do this for SEO and paid search. I should do it for mortgage checks, because
Yeah.
I looked at some of the courses that were out there, and I was like, some of these are really dense. Like, they can get really, they're good. Not to say they're not good, but they're sometimes they get deep into Excel, and I'm like, you got to kind of have like some visuals and kind of some movements, and you got to kind of really start at the beginning, and you got to keep the video short, because it's like, if it's I've seen videos where it's like a 45-minute video, and it's like there's multiple concepts in those videos, and I was like, yeah, there could be a better way. You just a short 3-minute video. What is a note? What is a mortgage? What's a deed of trust? Each of those are videos so that you can go back and reference. Oh yeah, what was that again? And you're not like looking at a 45-minute video. You're going, there's the one video. It's 3 minutes long on what is a mortgage note.
Yeah.
So it started with that, and then we just kept building, because the due diligence just kept going and going, and we just kept adding. And then I would go to conferences, and I was like, on like a downtime when everyone's inside, I was like, well, I might as well ask vendors if they'll give me a discount on the products. And so I just would walk around and get vendor discounts. And then the coolest thing we just added recently, which I was like, ever had those shower thoughts? Like, you're in the shower and you're like thinking of like, oh, that's a good idea. So we bought this software to run traffic to when we had a fund. Basically it was like a choose your own adventure, like, video thing. Like, so like, you ever been on YouTube, at the end of a video on YouTube, 2 other videos pop up on the side, either on your phone or on the thing? Well, a lot of people don't know how that works. That's just JavaScript. That's just JavaScript, and that's just routing. So we bought it based off for marketing. Like, if someone wants to invest in the fund, hey, you're watching the video. Hey, would you like to, start at the $200 mark, or would you like to start at the $5,000 mark? And based off which ones they clicked, we'd send them down different funnels, right? So we had it, and that's all we used it for. It was just that one little thing, but it helps to know based off, who's getting the more priority, the guy who clicked $100,000 or the guy who clicked $200, So
Sure.
It helped for setting up the funnels correctly. But after the fund dissolved, we just kind of like let it go. Like, it just was sitting there in like, the software bundle pile of stuff that I had. And I was like, what if we could do simulators, like a choose your own adventure? Like, we'll do one where we'll give you a situation, and we have a demo site where basically you go and you look, and then based off your answers, you go down different paths. So like, we had one where it's, check out this house. Oh, hey, all the numbers look good. Oh, the pay history looks great. And then we get to the part of due diligence, because they're supposed to, it's after all the steps in the academy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like testing your knowledge. And it's like, you get to this part where it's like, all right, now let's go drive the streets, by using Google Street View. And so they can literally do a live Google Street View and say, oh, wow. And then they come back, and the idea is they do it and they come back. But that I found a house in Memphis somewhere that was the only house standing, and everything else was burnt down. And so that's based off of blight, right? The blight of the neighborhood. Is this the last standing house? You want to take on the mortgage on this house? Is this a safe and, is this an expanding area? All these different characteristics. So once they would say, okay, now that you've driven the neighborhood, what do you want to do? Do you want to move forward or do you want to bail? And based off their answer, all right, you're moving forward. Okay, now that you're moving forward, this is how you're going to have to fade your bid, and you're going to have to adjust this, and you're going to have to, so based off that now, and so we set up. That's one of our newest things. I have a whole bunch of scenarios. It's just really hard to get Rick to sit down and do them because we've got a couple, and there's like one or two that I haven't asked him because I think the last one was I did math based ones where it was based off calculations, and I got the calculations wrong, and we didn't know until after I produced the video. And he was like, "Bro, those numbers are wrong." I was like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry." So he's kind of mad, and I was like, "Just hold off until he forgets about it." So, but those were fun. Like running a calculator with its MBII and understanding how to get numbers. That one was fun. Understanding how to view a pay history and go through it, and looking for gaps in the chain of title and things like that.
That's
I
no,
love
I
that.
remember
I
the
think that's awesome. That's like
yeah.
gamifying, like you turn
Yeah.
this into like a game so that
Yep.
it's not just boring learning and it's entertaining, which hopefully appeals to the younger generation, to be honest. Like we are one of the reasons that Nino and I started this podcast and was to get people excited about investing, and the younger the better, so that they don't have to wait. And what you're doing is awesome.
Yeah, I love the game aspect. It
Thank you.
reminds me of just having like a video game and being immersed in it. And I wish more video games gave you that option where if you selected this part, the whole storyline changes based on the route that you selected. And it's good because you get to learn at your own pace, which I think is invaluable. And I love that. I would look forward to just doing the academy again, strictly just to do those specific games because it would just be fun. And I mean, I at first, as I mentioned with notes, it was overwhelming because I didn't know where to start. There's so many out there. You can start as little as a couple $100. You can go buy the whole note, because this is what I wanted to transition to next is partials. So can you talk about the difference between notes and partials? I know it's kind of in the name, but could you differentiate between the two?
Yeah, so a lot of what happens with partials is that yes, someone will do a seller finance deal, right? Um, so they own the house free and clear, or they own the land free and clear, and they sell it to somebody at, let's just say, I don't know, $50,000, right? Well, they got a note now for, let's say they put $5,000 down, so they got a note for $45,000. So they might still owe some money, on their purchase price. Maybe they got the land for 20. I don't know, something like that. So what they'll do is they'll try to get their money back out, and they'll keep the back end. So let's just say it's a 20-year term note. They will sell the first 10 years of that note to somebody for usually kind of what they'll have in it, like, or maybe a little bit, if they can, a little bit more, make some money up front, some more money up front. But then after the term of the 10 years, in the paperwork, the partial agreement, the payments will revert back to the original owner, and so it'll transfer back. So basically, the note holder will sell the note, and then in 10 years, the note reverts back to me, and you're just buying a payment stream. So it's a pretty safe investment for the person who wants to buy the partial, because usually in the terms of the deal, if something were to go wrong, something that the borrower stops paying, you as the buyer, you're not on the hook. That's not your job. It's the original person that they have to jump in and start saving the day, which it's on them. Sometimes if they have to pay out the person that bought it from them, they would have to pay up what they're owed, like up to that point. So it can be, you kind of almost have to have some reserves. It's not like, it's kind of like you're not going to have like, run on the bank, all your notes are going to go down the toilet at one time. But if something were to happen, you should have some funds as a seller. But that, as a buyer, you don't have to worry about that. That's a seller's problem. But basically that's it. You're buying a partial of the note. You're buying the payment streams. You are transferred in as an owner. So you are an owner. It's recorded with the county. And that's it. I mean, really, those are around. I have a friend that's he's in the space, and he doesn't have a 401k, and so what he does is he just buys some notes. Like, he'll buy stuff sometimes just off Paperstac, and he'll already have the partial seller, the partial buyer lined up on the back end. And so he'll buy it, and then in newly originated notes, and he'll turn around and sell the partial. And then he basically knows, he's not. I think he's still. I don't know what he does. He had another fund too. This was maybe just something else he was doing, but he basically said this is his retirement plan. So he's like probably in his 40s, and so he knows like in like 10. He's got like
all these notes will come
10
back
or
to
15 notes that'll revert back to him, and they're all like $1,000. He'll be making, I don't know, $7,000-8,000 a month, 10,000 just collecting. And ideally, eventually, the only down part about notes is that it's a depreciating asset.
Sure.
So the further it gets along, it's not unlike rentals in that sense that there's appreciate and there's a lot of different write-offs you can do. You basically it's a cash flow. So you're buying a cash flow, and this does have an expiration date. But if you also look at the numbers of if you were to hold something, the returns are amazing. If you just look at, if I was to invest for this, we're doing something now at Paperstac where it's going to be, it's really cool. It's actually for our new version of Paperstac, which should be out. It's supposed to be out this month, but developers are kind of saying maybe not. So we'll see. Maybe it's going to be, development's hard, man. There's always something, but it's pretty powerful. And we were doing some stuff with calculations where you'll be able to say you're going to buy a note, and one of the calculations you can run is, when I buy this note, how long will it take me to be completely out, like get all my money back? And then based off the life of the term of the loan, how many more years will I be just getting money, and what is that amount? And so based off the money of you buy it for $10,000, how long is it going to take me to get my $10,000 back? And then once you get your $10,000 back, how much more of the term is left, and what's that profit? Because after that, that's just you're just making cash. So for me, I'm like, that's one hell of a selling point, because people will look at it and go, oh, that's a pretty cool investment. So it was something that we were, AI, man. AI is so cool. We were looking at different yield calculations with some of these JavaScript libraries that you can access. And then we just put some of these in the chat GPT and basically said, how would we do this? And then they just spit back a, code block, and it said, this is the code you can need. And it's like, this is I love it. We are in there all day. I use it all day, chat GPT, and with our new version, it's very AI focused. It's going to be pretty cutting edge stuff. Not that, but I don't know if that's where we were at in the conversation, but it's going to be a lot of things like that.
That's awesome because I think some of the, like us, I wouldn't say we're math nerds, but just as we're deciding, okay, we're starting our stack, as we talk about on the show, we're all about cash flow. Okay, where are we going to put our money? And right now it's, how can I look and compare apples to apples? Oh, well, this investment's paying me simple interest 10% versus I can get a note that's paying me an amortized note and getting my cash flow back, but I'm getting that back really fast. And then I can calculate my cash on cash return based on the back end of when that note's paid off. And if we're recycling our money using a line of credit, obviously it just helps to plug those numbers in and makes it more, I guess, even more valuable, creating a Paperstac type calculator, if you will, that people can kind of play around with, which I'm excited about that.
I'm just even having a epiphany moment right now. Talk about shower moment. I'm not near any water, but I had a epiphany moment while you were just talking. I was like, wait a second. So I can actually pair. There's so many different pairings that you can do, but one of the that popped into mind was like, say I'm buying one of those, like the long-term rentals, right? That in Ohio, for example, and they're typically pretty cheap. Say I can lock up one and pay it off pretty quickly. I own it outright, then I can create a note, sell it, seller financing while the tenant is in there paying me on Paperstac. And then once I create the note, can I do that? No.
I think it's so once you create the note, so what I would do, the ownership of the house, the note, and that would go to the new buyer. So they would be the one getting the rental money. What you could do is you could sell like an 80-20 mortgage note. So that way you're still in the deal. So then you'll still be able to collect. So you would be able to sell so you're retaining some of the so you're selling at 80% of the value, and you're carrying back 20%. So that way you're able to stay in the deal.
But then you could flip
that
the
might
note.
be something.
You could hold, you
That's
could
my
flip
next
the
thing.
note, and then you at the end, if you just sell it as a partial, at the end of 10 years, you're going to get that note back, and you'll just be collecting rents off of, you've already gotten bought out of the original deal. You've gotten your cash out, you're putting it into another deal. At the end of 10 years, when you get that note back, the rents are still paying in, but now you're getting 100% of those rents. I think that's where Pay's getting at. You follow me?
We need whiteboard.
We need a whiteboard. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
that yeah, because there's a missing part there where you're selling the notes. That person would be the one who is collecting the rents, unless you get that, and then yeah, because then after that, who would be paying the notes? There's the part that's missing. Yeah, I have to see it on a whiteboard. That one's
I know
getting,
this is like you're seeing in live how Pay and I operate. Like when our minds go, we go. So we are recording this. So I want to be mindful of that. Otherwise, people are going to be like, "Huh, what's going on here? What are they buying
no, I'm
notes?"
just trying to. You ever seen that meme where there's a lady and she's like, there's all these math problems, and it's like, is today Wednesday or November? You know, like it was like during COVID, it was like one of those memes that went around. So I kind of feel like that right now, or that one where the guys at the casino and there's all the math equations
Yep,
going off
that's
in
what
his
I'm
head.
thinking about. Yep, no,
Yeah.
that's
It's just I love that you can
Yeah.
cascade like
Yep.
one deal and then partialize that lump sum out and then get into another deal, right? That whole velocity banking, which we're huge on, is basically you don't even need like a lot of fancy different products. You could just use it with notes. You do it with notes.
Yeah,
And it works
that's
on.
what I'm intending on doing. It's just doing that. I'm just doing the. That's why I have the first position HELOC. The whole goal is to use velocity banking, sweep accounts, and then also to I'm started with Fund and Grow, and I'm trying to figure out how I can use Fund and Grow to buy mortgage notes to use a credit card to then get all the points and collect all the points, but then also be able to pay it off. But if the Fund and Grow credit cards I have are 0% interest rate, even that much better than a HELOC, my first position, and then at the same time using that and then chunking it down on my mortgage to kind of get that down to where that line of credits, whatever. But I've done the math on those velocity banking calculators. I'm like, God, is this right? It's like 7 years if I just do what I'm like, this is nuts, dude. Like, I'm so glad I get to hang out with and talk to people like you guys, because I talk to people around me and they're like, what the heck are you talking about? I'm like, dude, this is the way, man. It's IBC, velocity banking, notes, stacking, all these things. You throw them on a pot, and if you can make magic out of this, you change the game. It's the old school method it just doesn't make sense to me anymore. My brother is a financial guy at Fidelity, and me and him, like, at Christmas time we always have like not arguments, but we just have a different philosophy. I just like what do you want? He's like, I want $4 million in the bank. I'm like, why? And he's like, so I can collect $5,000 a month. I'm like, okay, so you're basically want cash flow of $5,000 a month. He's like, yes. I'm like, there's other ways. You don't have to wait till you're 57, years old to get it. I was like, that's, you can do that pretty, there's other ways. Like I'm getting closer. Like in time, I'll be there. Well, you crush over that threshold of what you need. If it's all about cash flow, then just focus on the cash flow, and there's creative financing stuff. Yeah.
Brett, you are speaking our language, my friend. We have a lot of episodes on this show that, like, I mean, just I'm gonna put this, and maybe we need to do an episode on this on its own. But this is like, you're talking 303 level stuff here, because we're talking, you can get a 0% credit card, get the cash out of that credit card. So now you've liquidated the card, you got your points. I've done multiple episodes already on how to use points to go travel the world, which I currently love doing.
Mm-hmm.
But you get that cash out, you open up an IBC policy, you fund the IBC policy, you get the cash value out of that IBC policy, you go and buy a couple of partials. You flow that money back through. Your IBC policy is now acting as your revolving line of credit. You pay that through, you do that for the full 12 months. 12 months is up, you owe the 0% credit card. You can borrow from the cash value to pay off the 0% credit card. That note's still paying. You've created money out of thin air. That's not your money. That's like the bare minimum slim jim of what we're talking about. We can just completely expand to it. So don't get me started.
I love this stuff. I've read Faye's husband's book. It's like my wife's like, why do you just bring that book everywhere? I'm like, well, you never know. I don't know what you might be doing. Like, I might end up shopping somewhere. I'm at Target. Like it's in the car, and what am I gonna do? So, or I bring it to the beach, and she's like, you just bring this book and you don't read it. I'm like, well, it's not one you just sit down and just like flow through. It's pretty dense. You know, it's like, you know, I read a piece in the chapter a couple bits at a time, like, hey, got to go through that, you know, because it's not one that you just like, oh yeah, I just in a normal sitting, I just read this book and I got it. It's like, you know, for me, it's maybe other people, but for me, I'm like, I can't explain it yet. Like some parts where I try to explain it to people, I'm like, yeah, you got to get the book. You know, and you can explain it to me when you're done with it.
I
Wait till
feel
part
like
two.
we owe you an invitation to our potluck.
Oh, Brett, you
Potluck.
would. Yeah, where we get together. We literally just do what we're talking about right now, just strategizing
In person.
in person and have a whiteboard and
Oh,
we're breaking. Oh, you would. Well, where are you located? I know we're going completely off track here, but where are you?
Orlando, Florida.
All right, we'll make a trip out there. We'll bring the whiteboard to you, Brett. Trust me. We will change your life.
Okay, cool, man. Yeah, I love that.
Okay,
Yeah,
back to
yeah,
notes.
I love that.
Back to Paperstac.
Okay.
So I know we can go completely off of here, but going back to the partials, because I mean, obviously Pay's talking about it from a seller's perspective, how it can be very beneficial. But even if you're just starting out, these partial notes can function as your amortized note, right? So if you're borrowing from your line of credit, you're doing velocity banking, and you're starting out $5,000. Between those 5,000, you could buy a few different partials, right? And kind of where those would cash flow, and what I wanted to kind of get at was, what are some of the potential risks with going down the route of buying partials and buying notes? Because so far it all sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, so you always have the thing of the default. That's huge. The good thing is that you're not a large bank, and a lot of times you can just talk to people like a human, like just
Yeah.
you know, hey, what's going on? You know, I had a note that they defaulted and basically said, hey, look, you know, you don't want to spend this. What do you want to do? You want to not be in this? You want to? It was a piece of land. He's like, do you want to leave it or what do you want to do? He's like, I don't want it. And I was like, all right, well, you know, I don't want to start a foreclosure on you. That's expensive. I actually didn't want to because it was such a low balance note that it would have been worth it. But I didn't. They didn't know that. You didn't know that. But like, look, just sign this deed in lieu and give it to me, and then gave it to me, and you can start a new note. But that's usually if you're buying, you know, worst case scenario is a deed in lieu. Foreclosures are like, those are, I don't see them as much as we used to. You know, that time it's kind of, it's a lot of stuff performing. A lot of stuff is just people that maybe aren't bankable. They're an entrepreneur. They claim to make $30,000, but really they're like making like 400,000, but they're writing a ton off. You know, so those are the type of the more notes we see. Those are the risk is what I'm saying is that default. There's other things too. There could be, you know, natural disasters. Natural disasters can happen. The Panhandle will want to know when they had a bunch of tarps, but you have what's called force-based hazard insurance. And so force-based hazard insurance protects your position. That's usually held at the servicer level. And so those are things, that's another thing that could happen. You know, there might be, you know, liens on it that you didn't know about. Usually that doesn't happen with performing notes. That usually happens with non-performing. Like if you buy a performing note and has an existing title policy, usually that you're probably okay. You know, like if you're buying something that's non-performing, you don't know what you're getting into. You might have HOA liens, you might have county liens, you might have, you know, back taxes. You know, someone's not paying their mortgage. A lot of times they're not paying other things too, especially if it's vacant.
Yeah.
But if you're just trying to do cash flow, which I don't believe in non-performing for cash flow. Cash flow is strictly performing notes. You're just buying a payment stream. Partials are probably going to be your safest bet because technically that person that's selling you the partial, if something goes wrong, it's on them anyway. So they're not going to sell you something that's because it's like, why would they give themselves the work? You know, they're going to make sure everything is on the up and up and perfect, because if it's not the buyer's responsibility. It's the seller's responsibility. So if you're, you know, I can't give a financial advice to there's that, but if I was getting into notes, I would be looking for first position mortgage notes that have a lower balance, just because really just want to get, you know, a base hit, just go around the track, just, you know, everyone's, oh, and then also a partial. So that's the thing I think just people need to take away is to just go around the track. We've been at conferences where, you know, people have been in the note space for like 5 or 6 years, and I'm like, how many notes you own? Like, no, I haven't found the right one yet. I'm like, what are you waiting for, dude? Like, just get one. Like, you know, just like, it's you're not going to hit a home run. You know, like, you know, especially with performing notes. It's just you're buying, unless you can, but I would say the only time you're going to hit a home run with performing notes is, and this is a secret, at the end of the year. So if you're looking to buy a note, I've seen some deals go crazy yields at the end of the year because two things. A lot of people have packed up and said, I'm done after, Thanksgiving. They're like, I'm out, done, I'm gonna just relax, whatever. So the buyer is gonna dry up. But then it's this weird event. We have funds that have what's called a wind down period. And so they have to liquidate notes, or they basically they have to get rid of this stuff. They have to sell by the end of the year, or they have to start paying taxes on. It's just a whole thing for their fund.
Mhm.
It's a lot of times they want to wind it down before the end of the year so they can go to the new year fresh. And I've seen stuff go like, I'm talking like 40% yields. Like, and the guy's like, even the seller's like, you are getting one heck of a deal, but I need this off my books. Take it. Rob me. You're basically robbing me, but I know it. I have to sell this. Merry Christmas. Like it's basically that's what it seems like. And I'm like, I've seen those go through a couple of times. I'm like, I'm gonna hold some money back. I don't know how many presents my kids are getting this Christmas, but I'm gonna try to see if I can get one for myself.
Well, it's
I was
good for
thinking
our-
that people want to sell their notes at the end of the year because Christmas is around the corner. They need money.
That might be too. That might be it too.
Well, what's
Yeah,
good
so
news for the listeners is that this episode is likely going to be released at like early December. So if you're listening to this,
Oh,
and this is like a perfect transition. So all right, end of the year, they're like, okay, notes sound good. I'm ready to go. I'm going to do part of my stack into it. Where do they get started? What's the website? What would you recommend? Do you recommend doing the academy, or how can people get started with Paperstac?
yeah. I mean, there's a number of things. Like, so I definitely, first off, know what you're buying. Like, it's one thing to go to Paperstack and kind of like poke around and look and kind of know. But I mean, like, I know exactly what I'm looking for. I have safe searches set up. You can set up a safe search. Like, I am looking for, this is the kind of amount of money I want to spend. I want to hit this yield. I'd like to have it have at least this many payments. And pretty much I think that's it, except for my criteria. And then I'll kind of pick and choose the best ones out of that, and then that's it. And then I actually set up, granted, I know the site pretty well, but I set it up based off certain sellers. Then I like certain sellers. Once you get used to it, I kind of like the products they put out. Like I know which ones are like, hey, servicing I don't have to pay for. I've been hit kind of hard sometimes with the servicing price changes. Like where it's like, whoa, what are you doing so special over there to make it $45? Like this guy I'm paying 10. What are you? You're doing the same thing. What are you doing different? This guy's not doing. And so that, or I base it also to off states. Like I got something out of Pennsylvania. I will never do that again. I wanted to record it and I was like, oh my gosh, it was like $500 something. I was like, what is going on here, Pennsylvania? But then go to Arizona and you're like, yeah, that's more like it, $10. It's like you base those things off because those do affect your yield. If you're holding something for like, let's just say I don't know, 6, 7, 10-year hold period, you're trying to hit a certain yield. If you just had to pay $500 into the recording of it and you're paying $45 every month, it's like, whoa, it doesn't affect it that much, but it definitely does change it. So those are the things I would say. Set up a safe search. Then I would say, secondly, we have a series on YouTube. It's like this Rich did it. It's just getting starting a note. We have guides. I think it's just you can find all that stuff in the bottom. If you go to the bottom of the site, there's a link to the Paperstac Academy. And if you're ready for the Paperstac Academy, jump in. It's we can, we're there to help. If you ask a question, we're answering. It's like an interactive thing. And then but that's if you really want to take it seriously and really want to know, it's a good investment because then you'll know the right things to ask, and you'll know, like, the worst thing is to go to a seller and say, let's just say they have a list for $50,000. You're like, I'm going to offer 40, and the seller's like, why did you offer 40? I don't know. Sound like a good idea. So they're going to kind of look at you differently than if you're like, I'm offering you $42,563.25. They're like, what the heck? Like, well, this is based off the yield I'm trying to hit. This is the number I got for a 12% yield. They're like, all right, I respect that. Then they're going to be like, okay, you know what you're doing. I know what kind of yield you're trying to hit. Yeah, and and you start having the questions of, my money's, this is where I'm getting my money at. This is the delta I want to make. This is where I want to be. And can you make that happen? The respect level for that seller to you has just jumped. They're like, okay, sure. I'm talking to someone that knows what they're doing. They're much more likely to close than to somebody that's just like, I'm going to pick a number. So like, actually we used to make people explain, and that somehow the many updates we've done, that feature somehow got written over somehow. Because it used to be if you discounted a note by 20%, you had to give an explanation. And I liked that because it kind of made people kind of go, oh, maybe I don't know why I'm doing this. And it kind of made them question it. But then, you know, it's somewhere along the lines, I saw some people giving like no bad, and then the sellers get pissed off, like, get out of here, wasting my time. And it's like, oh God. And then I'm like, whatever happened to that feature, man? And he's like, I don't know. We must have, you know, branched off in the code and went a different way. And I was like, can you branch back and just pick that one piece back up and throw it in there? But so between the YouTube, I would say we have a podcast, YouTube podcast, and on the Academy page in the top right corner, there's a link, and then you can, if you're not ready to, you know, go and purchase the whole Academy, which is $9.97. There's guides. You can just download the guides and go through them. There's free guides that way. That's pretty much everything. We give a lot of information there. There's a knowledge base, like inside the knowledge base. Knowledge base is kind of focused on a lot of stuff. How to use Paperstac. There's like how to do what, you know, what's the fees? You know, how do you do the closing? How do you actually broker a note the right way? And then, but there is a lot of stuff like, here's a list of all the books you should know. You know, Jim Napier, like, you know, that's one of the first books on the debt practice. And then I think with all that, you'd have a pretty good knowledge base. You know, like if you went through all that, like lowest hanging fruit, of course, being YouTube. And there's a lot of things where, you know, me and Rick kind of, we tried to keep our stuff like where it's very kind of, where it just kind of keeps it, we try to do what we call it snackables. Like, right, we'd have a timer like 15 minutes on the clock. And it's like, all right, this is a subject matter. We're going to get this done in 15 minutes and we got to get through it. And the good thing is a lot of stuff I still don't know. I'm not like the expert. Rick's a real expert on this stuff. I know what I've been in it for over 10 years, but Rick's been in it way longer. So there's things where, you know, the questions that I'll ask sometimes are like, as someone new, they're like, I was going to ask that because a lot of times I don't know. You know, like I don't know some of these strategies that Rick does. Especially on the non-performing side, you know, performing notes, I get it, but, you know, Rick really, really gets it, you know, so, and he comes with a real estate background, so he just, his number mind is, the way he thinks is very smart. And a lot of times when I ask him things, I say it with ways, I'm still learning some stuff from him, you know, so which is great because, you know, I'm sitting here doing a podcast and getting educated. So, but that's what I'd say. YouTube, Academy, guides, knowledge base. And then set up a safe search because we know that everyone's got a life. You're not just, you know, sitting around all day checking Paperstac. You set up your safe search and then wait for them to hit your inbox. And I will tell you that that's usually how the best deals get gobbled up. I will say also too, and here's the secret, is that if somebody like lists a note for sale on like a Friday afternoon and it's a good deal, I would get on it like ASAP. Because a lot of times what happens is like, you know, Friday after, like today, even when I talk to sellers, I'm like, hey, get your stuff uploaded, but you might want to list it on Tuesday or Wednesday. Because we just see like, you know, like this time right now it's 4:55 and it just drops off. Like I probably won't have, there will be people on the site that are already going through transactions, but not people starting transactions. So if somebody lists something for something, they're wanting to get an offer right away. If you're able to get in there and start, it matches all your criteria and you can get an offer that's way lower than they haven't got anything and they want to sell, and you can talk, and they're talking to you over the weekend, you might be able to get them into closing before Monday, before anybody else even sees it. And so that's like one of those things where, you know, Christmas time, you know, like around that, the holidays, and then also to Fridays, you know, especially if there's like a holiday, like Monday or something like that. Those, you're like one of those ones, like I've seen deals like, oh, that one's going to go. And then someone jumps on, I'm like, well done. You know, that's you had your safe search ready to go, and you knew when that hit, you knew that someone else wasn't going to be there, and you were the only bidder, and then you got it. So good for you. You know, so
don't you wish you have unlimited funds to pick up all of them?
I know. I was gonna say that.
All the. Yeah, I mean, I kind of just watch like the one safe search that nobody sets up, and this is just, and it's just, and it might be just because. Well, no, I mean, when people have done transactions together, a lot of people keep doing transactions together. But setting up a safe search on a seller is probably one of the most interesting ways to get something. Because a lot of sellers, they structure their stuff all the same. Like we have a group out of, I think of the Jack Bosch's group. It's always the same stuff, and they're all good notes. Every one of them is deeded. I know if I'm buying a Jack Bosch group note based off the current people that I know that sell there, you know what they're doing. You know, they're taught 12.9%, 20 down, RMLO, deeds of trust, professionally serviced, Madison management. So like, and then they tell them like, you know, get a couple months of seasoning and then put it on Paperstac. And it's like, so if you know the process, you don't have to ask as many questions. You don't have to, hey, is this professionally serviced? You already know. Hey, did you do it the Jack Posh method? Yeah. Okay, good. Let's go. And then so you know, and there's a guy out of Arizona. I can't even pronounce the county. It's called Yapavava or something like that. It's some county in Arizona. I don't know, but I like his stuff because the servicing's retained with the like I never get the collateral. I've never they won't let me have it. You know, they want to have it, and I'm like, fine, you can keep it. Just you know, show me a copy of it, and if they're paying for servicing, great. Then I know exact number I'm going to get. Is this the P&I I'm getting? That's what I'm getting. Not you're not taking out the servicing costs. So there's just things like that. I would feel like kind of like the hacks, you know. And this just I know it. I've been there. I mean,
well, and I love that you are both obviously on the founder side, but also you believe in it so much that you're doing it yourself. Like you're buying your own notes. Clearly, it shows that it's not just a build it and sell it to other people, but you firmly believe in it and are willing to learn. And I think that that's very valuable.
you know, the funny thing is, for years I didn't, and that's and the reason why is that I didn't want to build. So when me and Mike, the developer, we took a pact of, look, we're not buying notes. We're building a software company. You know, we're building a software company, and you know, if I need to invest in stuff, I'll do other stuff. And this was when I was like putting money into stocks and ETFs and like that. And but not, but just different stuff. So sorry, people have no money in stocks, but with that, it was like we don't want to buy our own the notes. We want our users to be able to find the best deals. If we know the deals come, and we get all the best deals, then they're gonna be like, oh, they cherry pick everything and take all the good stuff and leave the rest for you know they take all the good ones. And I had heard other companies doing that, and so I was like, you know, and then that word got out about those other companies. I was like, noted, you know, like you know, so for years, like I mean, literally, like it was a long time. And so I had friends that were I knew at note conferences and say, hey, if you're gonna list stuff on Paperstac, you know, if you don't sell something, and if you're trying to find an outlet for it, I'm willing to look at it if it's a scrappy deal and you can guarantee a buyback, you know. And so like if no one else bought it, I might look at it, you know, that way that I want to at least have the seller sell something, but then also too I want him to say, he's gonna buy it back if something bad were to happen. And that's how I started, was doing that. And then that's really what I do. A lot of times I just wait for stuff, if it's in there, like I actually had to exercise one of those buyback policies. And he bought it back, but it was gonna be one hell of a yield. It was 22%, but it was a funky deal. Like bankruptcy, the guy kept doing stuff and it wasn't gonna pay till like I would have paid actually this month or last month, September. And I bought it like January. I was buying it in January and I was like, dude, you said March. I'm not waiting until September. That messes up my whole strategy. He was like, all right, I did say March. Then give it back to him. I was like, all right, cool. But that's usually what, but I do leave in notes. I mean, so much so I've done other investment types, different types of cash flow vehicles, Prosper, some other funds out there. And I've looked at other things too. And it's just like, it's one of those things where it wasn't a shower thought. I don't know what it was, but it was just like, what the heck am I doing? Like, I was like, why am I trying to learn this Prosper program, which doesn't have a whole lot of stuff I can really dig deep into, when I spend 95% of my day staring at notes? Like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is stupid. So that's when I did that.
No, that's
you gotta eat your own cooking,
Yep. No, I know.
That's right.
And I mean, there's so much. This was great. There was so much stuff I feel like we could continue to go into, but I think this is a great introduction to notes, to Paperstac, what can be done. And so Brett, I want to thank you so much for coming on. You've been such a huge help. I know people will have gotten a lot of value from this. I know I definitely did by having notes already, but now I'm like, okay, now I want to go back and continue to explore. It's one of those tools in the toolbox for sure. And if you understand it correctly, it could be one of your major tools. And so I'm super excited about this, and I think people will be as well. So Brett, thanks again for coming on, sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom, helping us get off track by just brainstorming, because Pei and I love doing this stuff. Like, truly love it. So, Pay, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'd love to have like a dinner with you guys. But I could just imagine like I love geeking out on those things. I mean, like the whiteboard idea, and like I've shown my wife like like she's like, what are we doing now? It's like we don't have cash. Cash we don't have. She's like, we don't have cash anymore. It's like no. So we don't own our house anymore. She's like, what do we mean we don't own our house anymore? Like, we don't own our house anymore. She's like, what? So we don't own our cars anymore. Our cars are now owned with a trust. What the heck did you do? I was like, don't worry. It's gonna be so much better this way. And she's like,
We just manage everything. We don't own anything.
Yeah, exactly.
and she said, why do we do it that way? I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, when you have a nice car, if someone hits you, you look like a dollar symbol to them. And if they have to, chase you down to like, go find your blind LLC out of Wyoming and get through your trust, and they're gonna be like, I'm done. They'll do a little bit here, and they'll go to someone else. But like, it's like, I'm God forbid, my daughter's 15, and maybe one day she has a party and someone slips and falls to my house. Well, I don't own it. Like the trust owns it. And that's the thing is I realized one day it's like, you think all these new regulations and stuff they do. I'm like, well, what are the politicians who they're donors? What do they do? And it's like, they're not going to bite that hand that feeds them. What do they do? Oh, like the Rockefellers. And that's when like they all have life insurance policies, which is you can't sue. It's like you can't take that. It's like, aha, and that's where I appreciate that. I mean, we could ramble.
I know,
so
bro.
I mean,
I appreciate it, man.
And
thanks again for coming on, Pay. Thank you again for your insights, and everybody, thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys got a lot out of this episode. And Brett, I'm pretty sure we're going to have you back on because there's a lot more to get into. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next episode. Take care.